There's a lot here to get into. Joining me now is Mark Landsman, director of Scandalous, the untold story of the National Enquirer. Welcome to you, Mark. So, you talked to former employees who said Trump was one of the best sources for gossip even before he was a candidate. One reporter was assigned as the full-time Trump editor and said, quote, Trump saw the National Enquirer as a megaphone to an audience that he did not have. So how did he and the paper collaborate over the years to give him that audience?
Yeah, that collaboration was extensive and began really as early back as Ivana and really reaching an apex with Marla Maples. Trump would actually call the paper directly, would call a man named Larry Haley, who became the sort of de facto Trump editor for the paper, call him at all hours of the night and feed him stories, often about himself. In fact, he would call with a pseudonym. He would say he was John Barron calling, and would then feed the paper all kinds of salacious information that would continue to keep his name in the paper.
And you write that before David Pecker, there was Generoso Pope Jr. who founded the paper, and he came up with a fictional reader called Missy Smith from Kansas City. As we approach 2016, how did Missy Smith, the reader, become Missy Smith, the voter?
Well, Generoso Pope was a marketing genius, and he understood what he called the mind of the average Enquirer reader, which, as you said, he named Missy Smith in Kansas City. He knew exactly what she wanted to read, what her interests were, what kinds of tidbits of gossip she would share with her girlfriends at the beauty parlor. And he knew this because he had secured real estate at the front end of checkout lines in thousands of grocery stores across the United States. Back in the early 70s, he knew, as newsstands were closing around America, he asked himself, well, where are my readers going to be? And the answer was the supermarket. And so he identified this space. He custom designed himself these racks, and then he placed his paper front and center, eye level, so that not only Missy Smith, but everyone else you could not miss the Enquirer. And then he was able to do sort of market research week to week on what stories sold. Liz Taylor's weight gain and weight loss sold a lot of papers, so he had her on the cover. So any kind of a salacious rumor about Rock Hudson was selling a lot of papers. OJ sold a lot of papers, and on and on. And he was able to use this metric to guide his editorial staff as to what they would cover.
Yeah. It's pretty extraordinary. I just want to say this is the way the Missy Smith person was described. Someone who likes a blend of celebrity gossip, health tips, UFO encounters, predictions, human interest stories, and photos of adorable puppies. So now we get to Lachlan Cartwright, who was the executive editor of the National Enquirer. He joined my colleagues on the weekend this morning and described how he became suspicious there was direct coordination with the Trump campaign. Take a listen.
I thought there was a potential of something going on because we're running these coordinated hit pieces, Simone, week in, week out. Hillary, 6 months to live. Ted Cruz's father is involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. As one candidate's up in the polls, we're running a hit piece. And it seemed like there was some type of coordination, but I had no proof to go on.
Look, again, executive editor, how was it that even someone in his position at that paper or tabloid wasn't included in discussions around the full extent of the collusion going on here?
Right. I mean, I think the first thing to remember is that this is an Enquirer editor talking, and so you can't always take what these people say as truth. I would say that this practice of catching and killing stories has precedent. I think that we all feel like this is new information with Pecker and Trump, but the paper has a long history of doing this. Even preceding doing it with political candidates, it was doing it with celebrities, where editors like Lachlan had these very elaborate, we know this, relationships with publicists and lawyers to keep negative stories out, and they would trade them out. What's different here is the financial transaction that happened, of course. But this has precedent with David Pecker and AMI. and the Schwarzenegger campaign for the governor of California in 2003. This has happened before. So the fact that Cartwright is shocked, that and claiming that he didn't know is stunning to me. It's stunning to me that anybody at that level of the Inquirer didn't know, and frankly, it further supports why we were denied interviews from anyone within AMI when we made the film.
Yeah, you had formers, but currently they wouldn't give them to you. David Pecker's testimony has been extremely revealing, saying that he first gave Trump a heads up about a negative story in 1998, so it goes back at least that far, that relationship. And then he killed Karen McDougal's story, claiming her month-long affair with Donald Trump. Even though it would have been gold for the paper, even with all you've discovered making your documentary, did you hear anything in Pecker's testimony that surprised you?
No, I mean, this relationship was so symbiotic and really sort of felt almost obvious to us as we were sort of digging in. It was obvious what Trump was getting from the paper. As you said, he was getting access to Middle America. He was getting access to the typical Inquirer reader, a megaphone. And he was also getting a situation that buried stories about him. The question I always got was, well, what is Pecker getting out of all of this? And the answer really is twofold. One is proximity to power, of course. Proximity, which began with JFK Jr. when he backed him in the launching of George magazine. It doesn't seem to have party affiliation with David Pecker. It's just about how close to political power he can get. Of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger was part of the Joe Weider Publications family, and when AMI acquired that in 2002, he came with it, and Pecker directed his staff to say, Schwarzenegger is forbidden fruit. You will not write negative stories about him. And of course, then in 2003, he became the Republican governor of California. There's also a financial aspect to this in that AMI was floundering around the time that all of this business was happening. And there was the possibility of investment money coming in, possibly from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. And so Pecker was courting that at the time. So all of these things were happening. And it was this sort of perfect storm that made it really, that made this make sense for him. And of course, it's speculation, but, that's sort of what we discovered along the way.
What you put two and two together. All right, the documentary Scandalous, The Untold Story of the National Enquirer, Mark Landsman, people should look it up. It's a few years old, but it has current relativity today. Thank you so much.